Hello everyone and welcome back to the Coding Amateur. In our last video we would have completed our front end site is under construction page so that our clients or customers or those who would visit our homepage would know that we are currently building our website. We would really like to host this page on our VPS, so that's what we're going to do in this video. So first off, to host our front end, we will be using Docker, Compose, and Nginx along with our VPS. So let's go to our code base. So when you would have installed React Router Framework, it would have automatically created this Docker file. We are going to use this Docker file to create our image, and from that image we're going to spin up a container. Now the contents of this Docker file, we will not be exploring it in this video, but in another video we will look at how you build a Docker file. But for this video we are just going to use the Docker file that came with our installation. All right. What we would want to create secondly is a Docker Compose file, right? So let's create that and we want to create that within the root of the project. So we're going to create a Docker Compose.yml, right? Now, why do we need this Docker Compose file? Well, what we are going to do is we are going to run our containerized app as a service using the Docker Compose file. Now, we don't necessarily have to do that in order to host a front end, but the Docker Compose gives us an additional features that will be very essential to scaling our app in the future. So we want to use that as early as possible, so later on when we start building the app, I will show you how to scale it using Docker Compose. But I want to make sure that we have it already implemented so it would be easier to just use it when we need to. So in this Docker Compose file, we are just going to put services. Okay, under services, we're going to call our React app, and we're going to give it app1 because we can run multiple instances. And as I said, we will explore that later on when we want to scale. But for now, let's just add one instance and we'll just call it app1. Okay, and we must indent it and it will be build. And the build, that is the image we will use, will be found in the root directory. So in this root directory here, or in the same directory as the Docker Compose file, we have the Docker file. They are both within the same directory. So this build and then this dot tells the Docker Compose file to look within the same directory for the Docker file from which it will build from. All right, and then let's go to ports. So the default port that will be used would be 3000, but I want to use a different port. Okay, so this is what we will do. The port that I want to use is 3001, and this will be mapped to the default port, which is 3000. So I'm actually changing it from 3000 to 3001. So when we try to access the container in our browser, the container will be accessible through port 3001. Okay, and that's it. And all we need to do is save. All right. So we have saved our file. So we have our Docker file from which we'll build our image, and we have a Docker Compose file. We will build that. We'll build our container. We will run it as a service using Docker Compose. So these are the two files that we need within our app. One thing I just want to mention in your app, if you have any images, icons, the public that will be globally available. In other words, you don't need to log in to access them. You can put those assets within the public folder and they will be globally available to the app. All right, so just want to let you know that in preparing your app to put it within a Docker container or to containerize your app. Okay, so with that done, what I would want to do next is to go to my VPS and copy this folder with my project onto my VPS. All right, so there are many ways to do that. One of the ways in which I do that is using a program called Termius. Now, if you would have been following me along, you would have seen that in my earlier videos, I would have shown you how to use Termius to connect to your VPS. So you can go back to those videos and you could check it out. I find Termius to be easy to use and very efficient. So to copy my project folder to my VPS, I have it set up here. So I have a list of my connections here, my SSH connections, and I will be connecting to this VPS, which is the one we are working on. So once I've connected, it will put me within the home directory, and this is the folder I want to put across. So all I will need to do is drag and drop. But before I do that, I want to minimize that, because in this folder we have the node modules. Now this is a very big file, and I don't want to copy this file with the project. All right, I don't want to copy it because it's going to take very long. So I want to stop this project from on the local machine. I'm going to delete this file. Right, so I deleted my node file, and now I'm going to copy it without the node modules folder. Right, so I'm going to drag and drop, and it should start copying. So right, so it started copying. Okay, and this is the SFTP feature within Termius, and it's copying. So that should, okay, and it's done. So if I go back to, so right now I'm in my VPS, and if I do ls, I should see that folder. So this folder here, icon.com, that's it. So I'm going to cd to that folder. Okay, and I'm in, and if I do ls, I should see my project here, and here is my Docker Compose YAML file and my Docker file. So okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to run my Docker Compose YAML file. So here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to do sudo, oops, spelled it wrong, sudo docker -compose. I'm going to do up -build and -d. All right, and that should take the Docker file, create the image, and also spin up a container. So let me hit enter, and it's asking for my password. And I hit enter, and I am not seeing. Okay, so what did I, so let me try that again. Okay, all right, so I had placed a hyphen between Docker and Compose, and I should not have done that. Okay, so once I remove the hyphen, it is running. Okay, and it's telling me that my container is already created. So let's see if, let's go to sudo docker images, and you should see, right, so you should see that I have icon app 1 latest, right? And there we see an image. So it created an image. So let's look at our containers, running containers. So let's look at that, running containers. So if I go to sudo docker, sorry about that, docker ps, right, so we have our port running, we have our app running on port 3001. Okay, so we see here that we have the image and we have our container running. Okay, so what we can do, so let's minimize this. What we can do is go to our browser and we can put in the IP address of our container, followed by the port 3001, and we should have our website up. So you can see that once I put in the IP address for my VPS and port 3001, our app comes up. So we have hosted our app on our front end using Docker and Docker Compose, and we have our front end up and running. But you will notice that I would have used the IP address and not the domain. So the domain we want to use for our restaurant, and I'm using the domain I will be using for the restaurant would be the Coding Amateur domain, right? Because the VPS, or the domain and the VPS was the Coding Amateur. So of course, if this was a real or legitimate restaurant, you would have the restaurant name as your domain name. But because this is a tutorial and this is the Coding Amateur channel, I'm just going to use the Coding Amateur domain for this. So we will have to configure Nginx to serve our website on the Coding Amateur domain, and we will also have to configure our Docker Compose file, so that even if the website or the server, the VPS, should stop and restart, it would restart our app automatically. So let's go to Nginx to configure our domain, and also you notice that it's saying not secure. So we would also have to add a SSL certificate to make our site secure. So let's do that. Okay, so let's configure our Nginx sites available file. So to do that, let's go sudo. That would be sudo nano, which is our editor, and we are going to go to etc nginx / sites available / and the name of that file will be, we will use our domain name to be the name of the file. So that will be the codingamateur.com. Right now, this file hasn't been created yet. We are now creating this file, so we are going to hit enter and we should see a blank file. Okay, so this is how we are going to configure Nginx to point to our domain name when we for us to load our front end. Okay, so the first thing we want to do, we want to enter would be our server block. So let's make our server. right? So this is our server block, right? And inside of our server block, we want to tell Nginx to listen on port 80. Okay, ooh, not on, just listen and 80. Okay, and we want to also put in our server name. So our server name will be our domain name. So we will put the coding and we can also put www.thecoding. Okay, so we have our server name. We will also want to put our location. So this is the URL. When a request is sent, this is where Nginx will send the request. Now, what we want Nginx to do is to pass the request to our container, which is on port 3001. So we're going to use a proxy for that. So the command for that is proxy, and let me put that in, proxy underscore pass. Okay, and it's HTTP, and it's going to be localhost, and it's going to be port 3001. All right, so that is our proxy. So any request coming into Nginx on our domain will be forwarded to the container on port 3001, which is where our React application will be. Okay, so that's the command to pass the information. Now, we also want to put add two other instructions, which is proxy set header, and this will allow Nginx to pass value information from the client to our backend or to our container application. Okay, there's valuable information that will be transferred to the header. It will come through Nginx first, and then Nginx will then forward that to our container. All right, so we want to put host, and we will use the variable host. Okay, and let me make sure to put my colon now. All right, and lastly, we will set proxy set header x real IP. What this will do, is it will, just no dash IP, right? What it will do is it will send the real IP address of the client that is requesting the resources from our application. So Nginx, which is in between our client and our application, Nginx sits between our client and the application, and so Nginx will forward the real IP address of the client that made the request to our application or containerized application. All right, so that is what this is for, and we'll add and that would be stored in this variable called remote address. Okay, and this should be our, I think this should be it. So let me give the proper indentation. Okay, so this should be in a little bit more, right? So that should be it there. Okay, so this is a simple file, and this should get us going. So I'm going to Control O in Nano to save, hit enter, and then Control X. And what we need to do is we need to create a symbolic link between our sites available and our sites enabled. So this is how we are going to do that. So we are going to do sudo nano /etc/nginx sites available / the coding.com space, I'm going to go /etc/nginx/sites, oops, wrong spelling, sites enabled. Okay, I had too many R's here. Okay, so let me just make sure I spelled everything correctly. And that is it. And let's hit enter. Oops, I spelled sudo wrong. So let me go back and fix that. All right, do. All right, and let me try that again, and it should work. So let's do that. Okay, so we have a problem there. Let me just come out from that. Control X, and let me just see. I should have. Okay. Right. So, I realized what I did wrong. So let me come back here and remove nano. That was a big mistake on my part. I put ln-s. Okay. Let's do that again. Hit enter, and that was created. All right. So now if we should go to the codingamateur.com, we should be able to see our site. Okay, so let's go to our browser and check this out. Okay, before we go to our browser, what we need to do is we need to restart Nginx for the configuration to be implemented. So we need to sudo system control-ctl restart Nginx. Okay, and if we go to our browser and the codingamateur.com, we should see that it now points to our front end. So we have successfully implemented our front end, or we would have hosted our front end on our VPS. But we have one more challenge. That is, we have our front end is not secure. If you look in the browser right here, you would notice that it says not secure. So we need to fix that. Okay, so here is what we will do. We need to use our certbot to fetch a Let's Encrypt certificate. Now we already installed the certbot on this VPS, and if you're coming into this video and you did not look at the others, please go back to our previous videos and you'll see where we install the certbot, and we're using that certbot to install our Let's Encrypt certificate. So we already have that installed, so we will just go to sudo certbot -- Nginx -d and the name of the domain, the coding amateur.com. All right, let me make sure I spell that correctly. All right, so sudo certbot -nginx -d the coding amateur.com, and let's hit enter. It's requesting our certificate. Okay, and our site is secure. So let's go back to our, so if I do up arrow and we go back to our site, let's go back to, right, sudo nano. This is where we would have created our Nginx configuration for our domain. If we go back, you will notice that the certbot added additional configurations to our file in order to make it secure. All right, so that was an easy way in which to add a certificate, an SSL certificate to our front end. So let's come out of that, and now let's go back and refresh this page, and now you notice that it is secure. So if we click on that, you will see connection is secure, and if we click the arrow, security decodingamateur.com. Right, so we have a certificate. So in this video, we would have hosted our front end using Docker, Compose, and Nginx, and we would have secured our front end with an SSL certificate. So the last thing to do before we wrap up this video, we want to set up the service to run in the background so that if the VPS should restart, the service would be started or started automatically. So let's do that. Okay, so last but not least, we want to allow this, our container, to run in the background and to start whenever our VPS starts. So if for some reason our VPS should reboot, we want our container to start up when our VPS starts. So we're going to create a file that would allow our VPS, our container, to run in the background. Okay, so we need to create a file, and this is where we are going to create it. We are going to create that in, and we're using Nano, our text editor, and it's going to be etc /systemd, and that's system slash, and we're going to name, spell that wrong, system. All right, so let me make sure I'm good so far. So it's etc systemd, all right, and then it's system, and then we're going to name it whatever service we want it to be. So this, so let's React frontend.service. So it's going to be React frontend.service. Okay, and we're going to hit enter. All right, so I'm going to copy and paste the contents of the file. All right, and you can copy this down. Okay, so what we want to do, so we want to change the name here to description. So it's going to be our React front end Docker service, right? So we just wanted to change that to the name. And if you look at this line, you will see here working directory, and this is the path of your Docker Compose, right? So it is the path to the directory that contains the Docker Compose YAML file. So to get that, let's just save this for now. So let's just Control O, enter, and then Control X. Okay, so let's do ls to see what files we have here. So we are actually in the directory with the Docker Compose YAML file. So if I type in pwd, you will notice that it gives me the directory that I'm currently in. So this is my directory. You will do the same thing to get your directory. But what you want to get is the path to the directory that contains your Docker Compose YAML file. All right, so you will have to navigate to that folder, and once inside that folder, type in pwd, and it will show you, just as it did on my screen, it will print out the path. So my path is home codearm icon comp. All right, so let me go back now to that file that I created, and I'm now going to edit the working directory. Okay, so now remember, we are not putting the actual file in this path here. It's just the path to the directory. So my directory was home / codearm / icon comp. All right, icon. All right, and that is it. Okay, so that should be it. So I can hit enter, or Control O, sorry, Control O to save, hit enter to save, and then Control X to exit. Now, once I have done that, I want to enable and start the service. So to enable the service, we will do sudo system control ctl enable, and then what we name the service. So it is React Frontend dot service. Okay, let's hit enter. Okay, so that service should have been, that service was enabled, and now let's start the service. Sudo system ctl system control start, and then that would be React Frontend dot service. All right, I spelled React wrong. That was a typo, so it did not start the service. So it's REACT and not RESCT. Okay, so that was a typo. Let's start, and we don't get an error. So to see if our system is running, we will do sudo systemctl, and we want to check the status or status of React Frontend dot service. Okay, let me make sure my spelling is correct this time, and it looks good. And we should see now, if you look at the third line, so the first line, you see React service, React Frontend Docker service, that's the description, and then you see loaded, and it will show enable, and then you see active running. So our service is up and running. So our container, our Docker container, will run in the background. So it will continue to run in the background, and if for some reason our VPS should shut down when it starts, it will, this file or this service will automatically start up our container, so that we don't have to manually come in and start up our container. Now this is convenient because imagine that for whatever reason your hosting provider had a problem on their system and it caused your VPS to shut down. It means that when they started back up, you have to manually go in and start up your container. But with this configuration, whenever the service comes back up, your system should come back up with it also. All right. So we have now created our front end. We have been able to host our front end, and we have been able to secure it, and also we have been able to add a SSL certificate to it, and also we have made it available even when your VPS should restart. It will restart automatically so that you don't have to manually go in and restart it. So as you can see, our site under construction page is now hosted on our VPS, and it is visible to our clients or customers who would come to our website, and they can get additional information. So they can get our email address and also a phone number to contact us in the event that they do want to access some of our services while we are working on our website. So I hope that this video was informative, and that it is something that you can use in your development experience. So thank you again, and see you in the next video.